The topic of immigration is something that's very personal to me since it has impacted me and my family personally.
Immigration has affected me through my family. My family moved from Hong Kong to the US after the Vietnam War and like World War II.
I lived in China until I was 10. For, I guess, half of my life, basically. I lived within a culture and within a community where everybody looked like me, spoke my language, you know? And so when I moved here, you know, that kind of changed. I went from someone who was part of the majority to someone who was like of a marginalized community.
My entire life, I've been identified or reminded that I am a product of immigrants. My dad is from the Eastern Samoan Islands. And the US occupied that part of the Samoan Islands, now known as American Samoa. At the time, recruiting and enlisting for the military was heavy. Many of the Samoans there were promised all these benefits if they were to enlist in the military. And so my dad took advantage of that to escape poverty on the islands.
I always question myself, you know, like how American can you really be since you're an immigrant, you know? For me, I'm currently a legal permanent resident and I'm going through my citizenship process. Even the concept of being Asian American, you know, is something that I struggle with a lot is because whether it's a step up from being an Oriental, it's still something that's othering about that American term, you know, because like who gets to be American when, you know, you identify as Asian American. The thing about America is that it puts you into boxes.
One of the biggest things that really impacted me was the microaggressions I experienced growing up. You know, I moved here when I was 10, and when you're 10, you don't really, you know, think about like racial tension or those like racial remarks. I was just still trying to, you know, learn English, figure out what I'm trying to do in this new place, you know. A lot of that microaggression kind of led to me internalizing the racism that I was feeling towards not just myself, but towards even my community and the people of color and immigrants here in the US. Back then, I wouldn't even, when people asked me what my name is, I wouldn't tell them like my actual name that was on my birth certificate, like my Chinese name. I would just be like, oh, this is my English name, this is what it is, you know.
There are many issues with the American immigration system. This one specific issue that I'm going to bring up, it isn't specific to the American immigration system, but it does stem from it. This issue is the hurtful stigma placed on all immigrants. The generalization that all immigrants come to this country to freeload and reap the benefits of legal citizens.
There's such a negative stereotype and stigma against undocumented individuals, and most people are not educated about it, and we're not doing enough education.
That we're lazy, not hardworking, we're just here to steal the people's jobs, even though these people are doing jobs that most Americans wouldn't take. And also thinking that we're like criminals and like thugs, even though we are less likely to commit crime and more likely to abide by the law.
That like societal like stereotype, you know, if you can't speak very well, if you can't pronounce things or enunciate or articulate things, then you are condemned as like not actually intellectual. A lot of immigrants face that, and I like noticed that really strongly when I moved here. I still have that, like, you know, in the back of my mind, feel like I have to be able to speak well or be able to like pronounce things right.
One obstacle that I think is not always mentioned is lack of time. I have relatives whose family has been separated for over 30 years, and you know, there isn't really a way for them to reunite because of the immigration system. Personally for me, I was separated from my mom for 5 years and then from my dad for 3 years. And that was during the time period of when I was 12 to when I was 18. And I feel that your parents can influence a kid a lot. It doesn't matter if they're a good or a bad parent, but having a parent there and someone to lean on matters a lot with kids' development.
I see like many of my friends who have parents who have immigrated here and they try to get at least their green card, but they take like multiple years, a whole lot of like waiting, and there's nothing being done. And people blaming them for not being citizens even though they're going through the system legally.
In the American immigration system, the term for a non-citizen is non-resident alien, Like that term for it is so problematic, like they don't belong here.
I see a lot of problems with American immigration, even though it's based on like trying not to be discriminatory or like exclusive. It always like targets individuals who are people of color, who are especially brown or black, either fixing the system or just throwing the whole system away and trying something different and new.
I don't know if I know the system well enough to be speaking like what kind of legal changes we can be making, but I feel like there are better ways to go about getting documentation to make it easier, to make the process easier, to be able to offer like at least, the tests in different languages without them having to be living here for a certain amount of years.
I feel that when you talk about the race problem in the United States, an underlying problem is class in this capitalist society. And with the immigration system that's built to feed into that class system, that goes against what we're fighting for human rights in the United States. The money that goes into immigration, that's a business that not a lot of people realize. And where does that money go? Either change the system about paying money or like the legal fees, or give permanent residents a rights to vote because they pay taxes, they're here, they are kind of like they don't have a passport, but they're still people who live here and would probably live here forever.
My parents and my family's journey here to America is what motivates me to do what I need to do in order to become successful. But many need to understand these are people with the history, these are people with the story, people with valid reasons as to why they came to this country. They migrated here for a better life, for better opportunities, and that's what keeps me pushing on a daily basis.